I cheated on my husband and got deported after he lied to immigration courts, claiming our 5-year marriage was a sham arrangement for papers. He destroyed both our lives out of pure spite, landing us both in legal trouble, but while Connor pled to lesser charges and rebuilt his life, I was sent to El Salvador's overcrowded mega prison where I get 1 meal per day and my hair has fallen out from stress, all because I broke his heart and he decided to break my entire existence. I'm Maria, 28, was married to Connor, 30, for 5 years after we met at a community center in Phoenix. I came to the U.S. illegally from Mexico when I was 19, crossing the desert with my cousin to escape poverty and find work. Connor was volunteering there, teaching basic English classes to immigrants like me. Connor was different from other American men I'd met. He didn't look down on us or treat us like we didn't belong. As a plumber, he understood working with your hands and struggling to make ends meet. He was patient with my broken English and made me feel welcome in a country where I was always afraid. We started dating after I'd been in his English class for 6 months. Connor would drive me home after lessons, and we'd sit in his truck talking about our dreams. He wanted to start his own plumbing business, and I dreamed of working in a real bakery instead of cleaning houses under the table. Connor helped me get my first legitimate job at Garcia's Bakery, where his friend's family needed someone who spoke Spanish and knew traditional Mexican baking. For the first time since crossing, I felt like I could build a real life instead of just surviving day by day. Our relationship grew stronger as Connor supported my goals, and never made me feel ashamed about being undocumented. When he proposed after 2 years together, I cried because I never thought someone would love me enough to risk the complications of marrying someone without papers. Our wedding was small but beautiful, held at the community center where we'd met. Connor's family welcomed me warmly, and his mother even learned some Spanish phrases to make me feel included. I felt like I'd finally found where I belonged after years of hiding and fear. Connor helped me apply for legal status through our marriage, handling all the paperwork and lawyer meetings because my English still wasn't strong enough for immigration forms. The process was stressful and expensive, but Connor never complained about the cost or complexity. We built a modest but happy life together. Connor started his plumbing business with a used truck and basic tools, while I worked my way up to head baker at Garcia's. We saved every penny, dreaming of buying a small house and maybe starting a family once my papers were fully processed. I felt incredibly grateful to Connor for giving me security I'd never expected to find. He'd taken risks to marry someone undocumented, and his patience with the immigration process had given me hope for a real future in America. But after 3 years of marriage, I started feeling restless and homesick. I missed speaking Spanish all day, eating food that reminded me of home, and being around people who understood my background without explanation. Connor tried to be supportive, but he couldn't fill that cultural void. That's when I met Luis at the bakery. He was a delivery driver from Guatemala who'd recently arrived, struggling with the same adjustments I remembered from my early years. Luis understood my homesickness and the pressure of trying to fit into American life while missing everything familiar. Luis and I began talking during his deliveries, sharing stories about missing our families and traditional foods. Our conversations felt natural and comfortable in ways my marriage had stopped feeling as Connor and I grew apart due to cultural differences. Our relationship became more personal as Luis confided his struggles with loneliness and isolation. I found myself looking forward to his visits more than anything else in my day, feeling understood and appreciated in ways that had been missing from my marriage. Connor noticed my improved mood and assumed it was because work was going well. He was happy I seemed more confident and encouraged me to take on more responsibilities at the bakery, unknowingly supporting the environment where my affair was developing. Luis and I started meeting outside work, sharing meals at Mexican restaurants and talking for hours about our experiences as immigrants. These conversations felt more intimate than anything I'd shared with Connor recently, even though we lived together. The affair became physical after 2 months of emotional connection. Luis kissed me after we'd spent an afternoon at a mercado, and I didn't resist. Being with him felt like returning to myself after years of trying to be someone I wasn't. I started lying to Connor about working late shifts and weekend inventory, using the bakery as cover for time spent with Luis. Connor trusted me completely and was proud of my dedication to work, making my deception feel terrible but impossible to stop. Luis and I would meet at his small apartment, where we'd cook traditional food, speak Spanish freely, and make love with passion I hadn't felt in years. He made me feel beautiful and authentically myself without the constant translation between cultures. The affair continued for 4 months while I lived this double life. Connor remained loving and supportive, excitedly planning our future together, while I was falling in love with someone who represented the parts of myself I'd suppressed. Connor discovered the affair when he stopped by the bakery unexpectedly and saw me kissing Luis goodbye after what was supposed to be my shift. His world collapsed as he realized his wife had been lying about everything and living a secret life. Connor's reaction was immediate devastation, but his hurt quickly turned to cold rage. He said our entire marriage felt like a lie, that I'd used him for papers while planning to leave once my status was secure. I tried to explain our marriage had been real, but he wouldn't listen. Connor moved out that night and called an immigration lawyer the next morning. In his pain and anger, he decided to report our marriage as fraudulent, claiming I'd confessed to using him for legal status, and had been planning to abandon him once citizenship was secured. I was horrified as Connor presented our private conversations out of context, twisting my occasional homesickness and cultural struggles into evidence of fraudulent intent. He told authorities our marriage had been a business arrangement disguised as love. Connor's accusations triggered an immediate immigration investigation. Federal agents interviewed our friends and family, looking for evidence that our marriage had been arranged for immigration benefits rather than genuine love and commitment to each other. Connor provided investigators with altered text messages and emails, creating a false timeline that made our legitimate marriage appear suspicious. His technical knowledge from managing his business helped him fabricate convincing evidence against me. I couldn't afford proper legal representation to defend myself against Connor's accusations. Immigration courts presumed guilt, and my affair with Luis was presented as proof that I'd never been committed to my marriage or intended to honor my vows. Luis disappeared once the investigation began, terrified that association with me would expose his own undocumented status. He'd never promised anything permanent, and when our relationship became a legal liability, he abandoned me completely without explanation. The immigration judge ruled that my marriage to Connor had been fraudulent despite years of genuine documentation and shared life together. Connor's false testimony, combined with my affair, convinced the court that I'd deceived the system. Connor also faced charges for his false statements to federal authorities, but his cooperation with investigators helped him negotiate a plea bargain. He received probation and community service for perjury, while I faced immediate deportation to Mexico, claiming our 5-year marriage was a sham arrangement for papers. He destroyed both our lives out of pure spite. I was detained for 3 months while fighting the deportation order, held in an immigration facility with dozens of other women facing removal. The conditions were harsh, but nothing compared to what Connor's lies had arranged for my future in a country I'd left as a teenager. Connor's false testimony had labeled me as someone who'd committed immigration fraud, making me ineligible for any future legal entry to the United States. His revenge had permanently severed my connection to the country I'd called home for nearly a decade. I was deported to Mexico and immediately arrested upon arrival. The Mexican authorities had been notified about my supposed fraud case, and they treated me as a criminal who'd brought shame to the country by illegally obtaining American benefits through deception. Instead of Mexico, I was mistakenly transported to El Salvador due to paperwork errors, where I was imprisoned in the notorious mega prison system designed to hold suspected gang members and other perceived threats to society. My protests about the wrong country fell on deaf ears. The mega prison conditions are inhumane beyond description. Dozens of women are crammed into cells designed for a few people, with no privacy, safety, or basic human dignity. Violence is constant, and the guards often participate rather than prevent it. We receive one small meal per day, usually just rice and beans, sometimes with stale bread if supplies allow. The hunger is constant and debilitating, but complaining or protesting results in punishment that makes the already unbearable conditions even worse. My hair began falling out within weeks due to extreme stress and malnutrition. Clumps would come out when I tried to wash with the limited water available, until I was nearly bald. Other women shared similar stories of health problems caused by the horrific conditions. Meanwhile, Connor rebuilt his life completely after his minimal punishment. Through other deportees with connections, I learned he'd married his new girlfriend within 2 years and expanded his plumbing business significantly. His plea bargain barely affected his American dream. Connor's new wife is a U.S. citizen who'll never face the vulnerabilities he weaponized against me. He got to start fresh with someone who couldn't be destroyed through immigration status, while I suffer permanent consequences for his false testimony. Luis had vanished entirely once the investigation began. I heard through community contacts that he'd moved to California and was working under a different name, terrified that any association with my case would expose his own illegal status. The legal system here offers no appeals or hope for release. Once imprisoned in the mega prison, you're presumed guilty and forgotten by the outside world. I share space with women who've been here for years without trial, lost in a system designed for punishment. My family in Mexico was devastated when they learned about my situation. They'd been proud of my success in America and couldn't understand how I'd gone from having legal status and a business to being imprisoned in a foreign country for crimes I didn't commit. The psychological impact of Connor's betrayal is worse than the physical conditions. He destroyed both our lives out of pure spite, but while he faced probation and rebuilt quickly, I'm serving what amounts to a life sentence for his fabricated crimes. I've lost over 30 pounds since arriving, and my health continues deteriorating. The combination of malnutrition, stress, and unsanitary conditions creates medical problems that receive no treatment. Many women die here from preventable illnesses, forgotten by everyone. The irony is devastating. I cheated on Connor, which was wrong and hurtful, but he responded by committing federal perjury and destroying an innocent person's life through false testimony. His punishment was community service, mine is slow death in prison. Connor knows exactly what his lies accomplished and where they've sent me. The mega prison conditions are internationally documented for their brutality, and he chose this fate for me knowing I'd suffer years of torture for breaking his heart. Some nights I dream about our small apartment in Phoenix, the bakery where I felt proud of my work, the life we'd built together before I made the terrible mistake of seeking comfort with Luis. I'd give anything to undo my affair. The other women share stories of the violence and chaos in El Salvador, a country I never chose to live in. Even if released, there's nowhere safe to rebuild, and I have no connections or family here to help me survive. I write letters to immigration lawyers and human rights organizations, hoping someone will investigate Connor's perjury and help prove my marriage was legitimate. But I'm just another forgotten woman in an overcrowded prison system, voiceless and abandoned. 3 years later, I remain in the mega prison with no hope for release, appeal, or transfer to Mexico where I actually belong. My hair has grown back partially, but I'm permanently damaged by malnutrition and trauma that will never fully heal. Connor has expanded his business and moved to a bigger house with his new wife, while I waste away in a foreign prison for crimes that exist only in his false testimony. His spite was more important than truth, justice, or basic human decency. The worst part is knowing Connor committed far worse crimes than my affair, but he chose to destroy both our lives just to ensure I'd suffer maximum consequences for my betrayal. His revenge was perfectly planned and absolutely devastating. I cheated on my husband and broke his heart, which was wrong and cruel. But Connor responded by committing federal crimes and sending me to die slowly in one of the world's most brutal prisons, proving his evil exceeded anything I'd done to him. Connor got justice, a new wife, and a thriving business. I got a living hell in the wrong country, paying forever for his perfectly calculated revenge disguised as immigration enforcement. His hatred won, and I lost everything including